watching the award-winning GHS-TV, a nationally recognized student television station.
Welcome to Medical Talk. I'm your host, Betty LaMarr. Fear, worry, and stress are normal responses to perceived or real threats, and at times when we're faced with uncertainty or the unknown. So it is normal and understandable that people are experiencing fear in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic. Joining me today is Melissa Bosserman, licensed clinical social worker and psychotherapist. Welcome to Medical Talk, Melissa. I'm so happy to have you here with me today.
Oh, thank you for having me, Betty. What an important time to be talking about this.
Exactly. Now let's go into, I call it the S's today, the 3S. Stress, substance abuse, suicide. We're going to get all of that in today. And of course, we're going to throw in some domestic violence because I hear that is really prevalent too. But let's kick it off. First of all, tell everybody where they can find Melissa Bosserman if they need your services. And what is a psychotherapist?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been in the field for 20 years. I have a private practice in Germantown. And I specialize in attachment and trauma, which is why I'm so passionate about being here today. And I see individuals, families, and couples.
Okay, so let's talk about COVID-19. When I think about COVID-19, I think about, people being sick, ICU, and I've known people myself that have actually died due to COVID-19. But we sometimes forget that it also affects many people from the neck up. So let's talk about stress. Melissa, how does stress come into play with COVID-19? Because I'm going to be honest with you, I am an introvert by nature. Therefore, COVID-19 is just something that makes me anxious because it's something that I cannot control. But as far as being by myself, being an introvert, that part doesn't bother me. So let's talk about what it is about COVID-19 that stress some people out, where it doesn't stress me out, other than just not wanting to get sick.
Yeah, well, I think the list you just made is such a good one to shed light on why it's so scary. So, everything that you just said are some of our greatest fears. The loss of, will we physically be okay? Are we safe? Are we emotionally okay? We've been doing this for 9 months now.
Yeah.
It just keeps going. And so we hope that there is an end in sight, but we don't really know when that will be.
So what does stress look like? Like if someone come to your office and say, I'm stressing. So what would be a stressor other than just the fear of the unknown, or just because it can't just be about a mask, right? Because I just make sure mine match what I wear.
That's exactly right. Yeah. Well, there are two concerns that research tells us so far that people are the most concerned about. The first one is personal and family concern. Am I okay? Will I be safe? Can I keep my family safe? And I think that breaks down into first the physical. Will I become physically ill with the virus? And then the second is all of the emotional concerns about the ways that our lives have changed. The second thing that we know is really hitting families hard are the work-related concerns. So, people who have lost their jobs, that becomes a physical concern again.
Okay.
People who are worried about their work performance as a result of being homebound.
Okay, yes. Because I guess the times are really uncertain. Because I was actually watching the news this morning, and we are approaching the holidays, and a lot of people are stressed because they want to be with family. And the CDC today finally came out and sort of gave us some guidance here, and they're actually telling people do not travel. So I guess that would be stress for people, right? Knowing that you're going to have people coming over because it's traditional, and having to wonder if somebody's going to be sick because they came over. So
Yes.
is death a stressor for people, or just the getting sick part, or all of the above, Melissa?
I think it's all of the above. I think there's also the differences in the ways households are handling this.
Okay.
So when we think about the holidays and we think about extended family planning together, it's very, very likely that you will have multiple households with multiple ideas about what should be done.
Oh.
So it's not just the balancing my individual needs or my household's needs. It's also how will we balance our individual needs with everybody else's needs and desires.
Okay. Well, like I said earlier, I'm just sort of fortunate that I'm pretty good with, being with myself. My family has everybody decided that we're going to be thankful that we're alive, and everybody's going to stay in their own space, because my daddy is 86 years old. So to us, it's just not really worth it. But I'm pretty sure there are going to be some people, Melissa, that, they're going to roll the dice. I just don't really feel like it's worth rolling the dice. Let's talk a little bit, before we leave this segment, about children and stress. We're talking now not being able to go to school in some places. Let's jump into that a little bit before we go out here.
Yes. So children are identified as one of the greatest groups at risk. And there are so many levels of that. Just the loss of routine, loss of education the way we know it, loss of supportive services.
Oh.
So many of our children who are not going to school are missing out on speech services, occupational services, the opportunity to be able to practice socialization and get care outside the family.
Okay, and I know I could imagine being a child and, being disconnected and you don't understand. So anyway, we'll be right back. Stay tuned for more medical talk. We're talking about mental health, the crisis of mental health, and COVID-19.
GHS-TV started in 1982, and it was just a couple of cameras, a couple of on-air personality, and it's really grown into what you see today. It's a multi-million-dollar studio with top-of-the-line technology.
Being able to operate, all of the machinery in the control room, being able to use all of our software and hardware that we have around the studio is a great skill, because this is top-of-the-line equipment.
I feel like this class has brightened my horizon. It's something that I never thought I would be doing, especially as a student.
GHS-TV is probably one of the most hands-on experiences a student will ever get in their lifetime.
Welcome back to Crosstalk. Nothing really has just the vibe that we have here.
Especially after you finish, you get a real rush of, wow, I just did that.
By the time a student graduates from Germantown High School, they will know pretty much every position there is, from producing to directing to on-air work.
You learn time management, you learn organization, you learn how to work with people, how to better communicate with people.
We put a lot on them, and they have to be able to have the responsibility and the knowledge to get everything that we ask them.
I had very little experience, so in the past 3 years, the skills that I've learned have absolutely exponentially grown.
The class has actually helped me figure out that I want to go to college for journalism.
When a student graduates, they are the best possible version of themselves that they can be.
Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow.
For more information about the Kappa program, visit ghskappa.com or call 755-7775. You're watching the award-winning GHS-TV, a nationally recognized student television station.
Welcome back to Medical Talk. I'm your host, Betty LaMarr. We're talking about the connection between mental health and the COVID-19 pandemic. My guest today is Melissa Bosserman. Melissa, now let's talk about this. We've talked about the stress. Let's go into substance abuse, because I want to save the domestic violence for the last segment, okay? Because that's really like intense. So let's talk about substance abuse. If a person is abusing drugs, does that mean they were already abusing it, Melissa, or did they start abusing it because of COVID-19? How does that work?
Well, so it's interesting. I called my good friend Debbie at Bradford Health in Germantown before I did this segment, and talked with her a little bit just about her personal experience, because this is her expertise.
Okay.
And the number that she gave me was staggering when we think about the increase in alcohol use. Since March, alcohol use has gone up by 600%.
Wow.
So, we know this is a little easier to follow because we can track sales and we know what people are consuming and how much they're purchasing. We really don't know yet what the long-term effects of that are going to be or how people are suffering. The best thing that we can talk about is how to recognize it, and knowing that people who do have a precondition to alcohol or drug abuse, the most important thing we can emphasize is connection.
Okay.
So making sure that you're working with a sponsor, that you're participating in the groups that are happening. There's so many happening online right now. So really good access for support, and making sure that we reach out to people who we think may be vulnerable.
Okay, so what about other drugs? Has that increased as well? Other drug use besides alcohol? We know alcohol is going to always be, up there.
Absolutely. So it's a little harder to track because, we don't have the statistics as easily as
we're not
available
going to the store saying, I
alcohol.
want to, okay, all right.
Yeah. But I think, what we know is that right now stress is at an all-time high.
Oh, wow.
And people use both alcohol and drugs to be able to get away from those hard feelings.
Oh. Yeah, so let me ask you this. Do you have an idea why bars, I can't understand what's really important about going to the bar. Because to me, if I want to drink, I can just go to the little liquor store and the little yellow shack in Bartlett, and I can buy my wine or whatever. I don't feel like I need to go to a bar. What is it about a bar? Is it just being with people, getting picked up? What is it that make people so anxious about bars being open?
Yeah, I think it's the social aspect. So whether it is the dating component, or it's the sports component, it's the 2:00 game on Sunday afternoon. It's that opportunity to be able to be near people.
Okay. So being the introvert that I am, that's why to me, it's like, what's important about going to the bar? What's important about going to the gym if you're going to take a chance on getting sick? So it goes back to the social again, right?
I think that's part of it. I also think that there's a part that we've seen just within the human spirit that people have had a really hard time being told no.
Okay. All right.
So we find out, we no longer can do what we want to do. That's hard.
Yeah, but it is hard. But what's harder to me, Melissa, would be myself being ill or knowing that someone that I love is ill. I feel like eventually we're going to turn the curve here and we're going to get to the other side. But I want to live to get to the other side. So some things to me are just not that important. So
Absolutely.
So for an extrovert, they would be stressed out right now then, right? Someone that have to have human company all the time?
You know, that definitely can impact it. I also think stress is just a huge impactor.
Okay.
So if we think about what does stress do to our body, it gives us 3 signals to take care of ourselves. So we are either going to fight, we're going to try to get back to the normal we want to have.
Okay.
We're going to be running away, or we're going to be freezing. And so when we get those signals, there's a feeling of panic that comes over us.
Okay.
And when we have that panic, we become short-sighted. Okay. And so it's easier to think about being comforted in the moment than taking that, I call it zooming out.
Okay.
Going to that airplane view to look at the bigger picture of not only how we feel in the moment, but how we can care for each other.
Okay. That's what I think is really important, because I hear them using this term, people have this, what is it, COVID fatigue, and therefore they don't care anymore. How can you ever not care about your health and wellness? That's, to me, that goes way above stress there now. Stress makes me want to do the right thing, right? Because I feel like I'm thinking better. But that's me.
Yeah. So you are probably then what we would call a pursuer. That when you get stressed out, you get extra energy, you zoom in, you can see more, almost like a feeling of hypervigilance.
Yes.
So that would be the opposite of a person who is running or freezing.
Okay.
Who is going to tend to lock up more.
Okay. Well, you're right, because that's the VA. I have my own psychotherapy at the VA, and that's what she says, that I'm hypervigilant. So I think those negatives end up being a positive for me during this pandemic. Stay tuned for more medical talk. We're talking about mental health and this crisis during this pandemic. When we come back, we're talking about domestic violence during this crisis. You want to stay tuned for this.
And it's very fun to be in band, trust me. It's so much fun.
When I was an 8th grader and I saw them march, and I was like, wow, I need to be a part of this.
Our main performing group is the varsity band. That encompasses our marching band and our varsity concert band. We also have the jazz ensemble.
It's unique, so we're really lucky to have that.
I'm very methodical about teaching. I try to stay up to date because I want my students to have the best information that I can pass along to them.
He's excellent. He commands a sort of drive that we didn't exactly have.
I lead the class, but I also believe in the students self-assessing their work.
The leadership is led by the students. We lead most of the practices. It's basically just student-led.
And I think that's important for them to take that kind of ownership.
If you want to be a musician, you gain extremely important music skills, music techniques.
1, 2, 3.
There's so many opportunities for fellowship, and band is a family. And you develop that small community where you support each other, not only musically, but in many ways.
Really, without the band, the football games would be lame. Without the band, you wouldn't really have the pep rallies. The band is like a good foundation for the school spirit. If you want to join band, just do it.
I think band was the best part of my high school career.
For more information about the Kappa program, visit ghskappa.com or call 755-7775. You're watching the award-winning GHS-TV, a nationally recognized student television station.
Welcome back to Medical Talk on GHS-TV and Comcast Channel 17. Joining me is psychotherapist, licensed clinical social worker, Melissa Bosserman. Melissa, now we're talking about domestic violence. I guess I could understand that, knowing that people are stuck in the house, and as you said, they're stressing out. And so let's jump into that because this is really serious. I can only imagine being a male or a female locked in the house with someone that's abusing you. Tell us about that.
Yeah. And I think, Betty, I think we want to just kind of generalize it first and talk about just violence in the home in general. So, just like we talked about alcohol and drugs increasing in order to soothe all of that worry, all of that stress that people are feeling. It also happens that, when people are worried and concerned, anger increases, irritability increases, and at this time, so many people have been locked together for such a long period of time. Families have become teachers of their children. Okay. They don't know how to teach. They don't want to be teachers.
Exactly.
That was not the profession that they chose. And are trying to manage the stress.
Okay, so is it possible for domestic violence to have just started because of COVID? Or could these be situations where domestic violence was already in play, but COVID-19 just magnified it?
Both. So it's going to be the same thing as substance abuse, that people who were predispositioned to that before, but were getting breaks from one another, it just makes sense that the violence would have more rounds because people aren't getting breaks. And for people who have been together and are way outside of their window of tolerance, that we would see an increase in both emotional and physical abuse.
Okay.
And those are statistics that we can actually follow right now. We know that emergency rooms are tracking and seeing more benign bruises, incidences that show us that families are in trouble.
Okay. Now, let's talk about children, because they're very innocent. And I have heard from people that work around in the healthcare that work around children and say there are more children coming in that are being abused. So what does abuse look like for children? Because I never experienced it as a child. So what does it look like?
Yeah. Well, so from an emotional standpoint, that can be a child just getting unrelenting, difficult messages, messages that wear us down, especially if they aren't being balanced out with more positive messages. It also can look like neglect. So I'm spending way too many hours by myself. Sometimes at no fault of the caregiver because they're still trying to work a full-time job and balance the stressors in their own life.
Okay, so what about, Melissa, they talk a lot about children when they're not in school. They're not getting proper nutrition. What does that look like?
In our area, I actually think that Shelby County has done a wonderful job making things available. We've had pickup stations all across the county. And as long as somebody can get to those or another caring adult is dropping those off, I think our community's done a decent job with that. I've heard of teachers running food. I've heard of neighbors running food. I'm hoping that's going well.
Okay. Well, that is really good. So if a woman, how do you is there a way to break the cycle because of domestic violence in the home right now? Because it's not like you can go anywhere, right? Because most people feel like it's, I mean, when you think about it, it's almost like if I leave the house, I may get COVID-19, I may get sick and get my children sick. But if I stay here, then I'm going to be abused. Is it more physical abuse, Melissa, or a little bit of both? Mental, emotional, dad has lost his job. You know, people, when it comes to finances too, that go back to what you were saying earlier, a lot of stress. So is it physical and emotional and mental?
I don't know that you ever have physical abuse without also having emotional abuse. I think those go 100% hand in hand. When physical abuse is involved, we recommend that the person identified as the victim has a plan. So a safe place to be able to go in the home that is not the bathroom or the kitchen. Find another room in the house that they're prepared to get to that room, that they have people on the outside, at least one trusting person that they're letting in on how life hard is.
Okay. Yeah. So that's, to me, is so, when I think about that, it's devastating to me because I've never, thank God, experienced feeling trapped, you know, in any sense of the word. So I have compassion for any human being that is trapped, and they're trapped in a bad situation. But Melissa, before we wrap this up, this has been so good, and I thank you so much. Just sort of kind of, in this last minute, give everybody some information that they need, if they need help, where they can go to in this last minute.
Yeah, so we have so many, there's suicide hotlines available. There are domestic violence centers, call lines. But maybe the biggest thing we could say today, Betty, and I can get a list of numbers that we can post and make that available.
Okay, thank you.
But the most important message today is that we need to be aware that we need to be caring for each other right now.
Okay.
We need to be worried about our neighbors and our family members and our friends. And we need to be looking for signs that people are struggling and be willing to reach out.
Thank you so much, Melissa. It's just really wonderful. We could just go on and on. You know, I'm so thankful that you're with me today. I would like to thank my guest, Melissa Bosserman, for a wonderful conversation about mental health and the COVID-19 pandemic. Thanks for watching Medical Talk with Betty LaMarr on GHS-TV. Remember, you can enjoy Medical Talk on Fridays at 1:30 p.m. on Comcast Channel 17. For more information on our programming, please check us out on the web at ghstv.org, where we're streaming live 24 hours a day. You can also check us out on Facebook and Twitter. I'm Betty LaMarr from all of us at GHS-TV. Thank you for watching Medical Talk, and I hope to see you again.